come one, come all, nothing but love, nothing but respect. You know what we do, what we don't, what we is, what we isn't. And what we is here today, bringing you guys and girls the One Piece War. I have with me today Eggs for Brekkie, aka Daniel. Say hello, my dude.
Hello, my dude.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, hang on. Something's happening with my audio. Hang on. Keep talking.
Hello, hello, hello.
Okay, I don't know what I've just done. I can see the audio coming through for you on the stream, but I can't hear you. It must be my in-app settings. Hang on a second. Gotta love when this stuff happens. Input, output. Keep talking. Hello, hello. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Oh, hang on. That's the wrong spot. There's. Keep going.
Hello, 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 hello. Hello, hello.
Okay, hang on.
Hello.
How's that now? That's better.
Yeah, can you hear
Yeah,
me?
yeah, yeah. Oh, that was
Yeah.
playing havoc then. I think I just accidentally swapped over the audio output then. That confused the
Uh,
shite out of me. Alrighty. This was a good chapter. Chapter 1083 of One Piece. If you haven't read the chapter already, you know what to do. Go read the chapter or read along with us. It is an amazing chapter. Everything from the cover page up to the end, up to the fact that it actually continued on what happened last week, which I'm not going to lie, I wasn't fully expecting to actually get that sort of attention. You know what I mean? I didn't necessarily know if we were actually going to pick up with Sabo or not. So it's good that we did. And it makes me feel like we're going to continue on with Sabo for a few more weeks as well.
yeah, true.
Um, which it's almost been 2 months now since we've seen a Straw Hat. In
Yeah, it's weird because I remember at the end of last one we were saying we've got to go back to the Straw Hats now because it's just been too long.
low
But
key,
no,
I could
yeah.
go the rest of the year without seeing a single Straw Hat, and I'd be okay with that as long as the rest of the chapters are as good as these chapters have been.
Well, that's the thing. Like normally when we move away from the Straw Hats, the reason that we're doing it is because it's like a real like giving good background, cool information. So weirdly enough, it is actually like the fan base is generally totally happy to not be viewing the Straw Hats as long as it's like something cool that's going on.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot to talk about. A lot to talk about. First things first, we get to see Doflamingo in a color request or cover page request, and this is the first time we've seen Doflamingo since he's been in prison. Um,
Oh,
Not canon, so it doesn't really matter. But I'm actually a little bit curious as to where this color spread is supposed to take place. I wonder actually if it's supposed to take place on Long Ring Longland with how tall the trees are. Because it seems
mm.
like everything's oddly tall. You know what I mean? And I know, like when I first saw this, I actually got a little nervous because I was like, Oda's been cheeky lately with like the color, like the cover spreads having something to do with the chapter. So I was a little bit like, shit, are we going to get Dofi busted out soon? Ooh. But no, obviously that didn't happen in this chapter, although it's not to say that it's not possible. Um, but it's good to see him again, because it's like, Dofi's one of those characters that it's like, I feel like he gets the adequate amount of love in the communities. You know what I mean? People are
I
either
agree.
like, he's really good, or people absolutely love him. And all, like,
He
he's a
deserves it.
yeah, he's a piece of shit, but he's like the best piece of shit the series is probably like he's the most like as they adequately say, he's evil's charisma. He's the most charismatic piece of crap we've probably got in the series,
Hmm.
which is good. Um, but yo, so starting at page two and three, I guess, but starting at the beginning of the chapter, um, we cut back to the Cumberbucket Queendom. We got Sabo informing Dragon and Ivankov of what happened while he was gone, which, again, based on last chapter, as we talked about, when we last saw Sabo before the Lucy was destroyed, he said, on the empty throne, I saw blank. So it's leading up, most likely, leading up to a Im reveal or a twist of something nothing to do with Im, but is very like it's gonna be like so close, but you just missed the mark. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we've talked about this a little bit, but this chapter did some really weird stuff for me. All right, and I'll bring it up here. So on the first panel we see of this chapter, so see how we see a few of the revolutionaries there. We see Morley over there on the right, obviously the most clear cut image. We see Koala. Then we see who I'm assuming is the cow, Ushimaru. And then Ahiru, who is Bello Betty's subordinate with the robot arm. And then you cut over to the left a bit more, you got Lindbergh flying on his jetpack, and to the left of him you got Karasu, right?
Yep.
I want you to take note here, because it'll come back more importantly later. How tall is Morley? Assume Morley's on his knees or sitting down here. How tall is Morley?
I mean, he's quite tall, right? Because he's a giant.
He's a giant. The smallest giants are around 12 meters tall, right? So,
yep.
Assuming he's sitting down there, he's probably 4 to 6 times the height of a normal human, would you say? And, like, when we say a normal human, One Piece humans are, like, all 2 meters tall. Right?
Yeah, true.
So that's, you know, he's sort of in, like, you'd be, based on his height, and especially based on how we've seen him in previous chapters, he's around the 12-meter mark. He's like one of the smaller giants, right?
Yeah.
I want you to keep that image in the back of your mind, because it's gonna raise questions later, right? Then we get to Sabo, and I love this idea. So Sabo, while they were in the Reverie, and I love how we're finally getting back to the Reverie, and weirdly enough, this flashback arc here actually makes me feel like we may eventually end up getting a Akainu and Aokiji flashback too. For years, I thought there was no reason or no need to have it, but based on the fact that the Reverie happened 4 years ago now, 5 years ago now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're now just cutting back to it, it fills me with hope that some of the stuff that was off screen was actually just being saved for flashbacks.
That's the weird thing, is that, like, the Reverie happened so long ago, but it still feels like everything that's happened at the Reverie is being, like, it's still happening. Like, it's still being resolved. Like, obviously the Reverie is over, but, like, all of this stuff that's happened at the Reverie is still being resolved. Like, we still have Vivi with Morgans and all that stuff. Like, it's really weird. Like, this Reverie it's not just been, like, one cool set of, like, 10 chapters where it's like, oh wow, we learned so much cool stuff and now let's move on. This is like a major thing that's, like, propagating through years and years and years of One Piece.
And I actually really like the direction they take it, which is they declare war on the Celestial Dragons by burning down their symbol. Their symbol being the hoof of the Celestial Dragons. And weirdly enough, we've known this has been a symbol of theirs for decades, straight up decades. But we've never seen them actually, like, have ornaments of this symbol. And to me, that's really crazy to see. Because one of the big things about the hoof of the Celestial Dragon is we don't know where the origin for it comes from, do we? Right?
True.
And just, like, breaking down some of the things that we know right now, I think it's really important to note, we just had the Wano arc with Kaido, and we know that there's a dragon fruit that exists, right? If you have to break down 3 key things here to do with dragons, it's Ryugu Kingdom, the country that exists underneath MARIJOA, has a dragon. Like, the Fishman Islands animal representative is a dragon, and an eastern dragon at that. That's weird, but it's also really interesting because we know that the dragon fruit is actually the fish fruit model blue dragon. Right? So to me, there's a weird connection between the underworld there and the above world here with the Celestial Dragons. But then even breaking down the name Celestial Dragon and looking at Celestials for a second, we know that the likes of the Sky People came from the moon. So I'm wondering if maybe in some capacity in the Void Century, whether it was a Skypingan, a Shandian, a Birkin, or a Lunarian, actually had the dragon fruit and founded what was later colonized by the Fishmen as the Ryukyu Kingdom. Because the Fishmen didn't originally live in the Ryukyu Kingdom under the water. They originally lived on land and were driven into the sea. So that kingdom could have originated from a completely different civilization at some point. Again, I know this is like a really random thing to go on a tangent about, but it's one of those things where it's like they keep bringing up the hoof of the celestial dragon, so that imagery is supposed to be important in some capacity, and we know like the tyranny that they impose, but we're starting to get to the point where it's like, well, we need to start thinking a little more about what celestial dragons are. Like, they are the 20 kings that founded the world government, but there's obviously, and with the way the chapter continues, they've got a lot more nuance in them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
But, that being said, apart from the hoof of the celestial dragon, the second thing was to free as many slaves as possible and Kuma. Now, we know that Kuma unfortunately went back to MARIJOA, and he's still climbing the red line right now. But we also know that Sabo kind of brushed past that last chapter to the point where it actually upset a lot of fans, going, oh, Sabo shouldn't react like that. But I think Sabo definitely has a lot worse things on his mind than necessarily what's happening with essentially the corpse of one of his friends, right? Which adds a lot more precedence to this and this conversation here, right? Because the third and final thing was they destroyed their food and stockpiles, starting a siege of MARIJOA. And then around the world, the heavenly tribute ships and the food reserve ships were attacked by the revolutionaries, putting a halt to incoming produce to MARIJOA. That's fucking
super
crazy.
Awesome, by the way.
Super
awesome.
I've been so upset. Like, I remember straight up 5 years ago. I remember when Reverie first started, and everyone was like, "Why is Dragon not declaring war?" We had like hints of the wind, and everyone was like, "He's gonna be standing on the table like Sanji at the whole cake wedding, and he's gonna be badass, and he's gonna be like, I declare war on you all," and none of it happened. But getting the siege stuff here actually makes me feel so much happier because it's straight up warfare, but they're also not waging war on good people like the Marines, or the good Marines at least. They're straight up just starving out the bad people.
Yeah. And also, like, you have to consider that before they can do this, before they can starve them out, they had to go and free as many slaves as possible, right?
Yeah.
Because if they starve them out, who's going to die first? The slaves. It's going to be like, we don't have enough food. We're not going to feed the slaves. They're just all just going to slowly die of like starvation. We'll give them like a grain a day, and they'll just die. And so they went in. They freed all the slaves. They got Kuma because he would have died as well. And then now they're doing this. It's excellent. It's like, this is like proper warfare. You know, like. Can't go in and like take them all out directly. Then you starve them out. You attack trade routes. And in a world like One Piece where everything is like islands and everything is the sea trade routes and stuff like that would be like so significant. And with all of the weather and everything like that, it would actually be reasonably predictable, the trade routes, right? You'd have to go on very specific planned out trade routes that are like less likely to be hit by a massive storm, and attacked by sea kings and pirates, and so like, and then but then because you have to go in those specific lanes, you will then also like, you know, Dragon can just find out about where the lanes are, and he can basically know every single trade route that there is. And essentially, the only trade that gets through are trade that's being supported by someone like an admiral who's strong enough to stop any raids.
And even
so, like,
then,
literally, admirals are going to be on escort duty because of the revolutionaries.
And even then, that's limited resource. Which actually raises another question that I had. So we talk here about how they've cut off the heavenly tribute and all stuff like that. And 12 kingdoms rebelled. 8 succeeded in rebelling. Right? Leloucia being one of the 8. One thing I really want to ask here is, we only know of MARIJOA on the Grand Line, but it was actually back in East Blue when we were first going to Reverse Mountain that we learned that there were actually a lot of nations that exist on the Red Line, not just MARIJOA. MARIJOA is the nation that exists strictly at the other side of the New World.
Yeah.
Right? So this might actually be really interesting to see if the kingdoms surrounding MARIJOA on the Red Line rebelled as well.
Mm.
And that essentially leaves MARIJOA blocked in. Because in that regard, right, if you've got MARIJOA that's up above up high above, where it's hard to get resources, but it's really, easy to win a war sort of thing. But then on its left and right, it's now entrapped in another conflict with another set of kingdoms. That could be crucial to stopping them, or quote unquote thinking you're going to stop them before they actually retaliate.
Yeah.
So I'd be really interested to see where these kingdoms are and what they've actually done to rebel at this point in time. Especially because such rebellion has come at really big detriments in the past to people. To the point that we know right now, 1 in 4 countries rebelling with the revolutionaries because of this incident lost. Now, you could infer what that means, but I think that's actually heavily implied that the revolutionaries in those countries just got defeated completely.
Yeah, basically it's like a failed coup, right? Like
Yeah.
a coup can go off or can fail. Like, because okay, assuming the king in this situation doesn't want to rebel because he's not a commoner. He's rich no matter what, right? And
Yep.
he just basically spends the commoner's money to the government to keep his country legitimate, and then just let the commoners pay for it and be poor, right? So the king's rich no matter what, and his interest is just to keep paying the world government no matter what. Whereas the people rise up because the people are getting starved by the world government. And every time they complain to their king, we're really poor, the king says, sorry, but I have to give all this money to the world government. So the coup is basically them trying to take over their own kingdom so that they can then be free of the world government. And it's just whether or not they manage to take out, whether or not the army of that kingdom stands with the king or with the people, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this is where things get a lot more interesting. So Dragon confirms, right? We've hit them hard, but that almost certainly we haven't cut off all of their supply lines. So this hasn't starved them out completely. It just means, for the most part, right, and this is actually probably going to be more impactful than a lot of people realize. Dude, the Celestial Dragons aren't getting their caviar. They're not getting their Wagyu steaks and stuff like that. But they can't, individually, their pompous asses can't survive without their luxuries.
Yeah.
So this is gonna. It's like
They're very quickly going to be screaming at everyone beneath them, like Kong and all of that. They're going to be screaming at them, saying, "Get us our resources back. Do whatever you have to do. I don't care if it's risky. I don't care if it's dangerous. Go do some bunch of dumb shit to try to get our resources back." And then Kong is going to get pretty annoyed, but he's going to have to do it because the Celestial Dragons are akin to gods, and basically the world government and the Navy and CP0 and everything are going to be forced into taking engagements that are just stupid to take, but they have to do it because they need to get these resources.
See, I love that. But do you know what else I found really, really interesting here? And I wonder, because I haven't talked to you about this chapter yet, right? Your immediate reaction was to say Kong's going to have to deal with this issue, right?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about people directly below the Celestials.
Because right now, do you know what is really intriguing me? And moving on to the next panel here, we have Dragon re-bring up a group that was introduced by Akainu. Of course, these are not the kind of people to stay quiet under duress. If they mobilize the Holy Knights, that's where the fighting will begin. Right? I'm sure, since you read this chapter, you've seen a bunch of stuff and a bunch of theories and a bunch of people talking about the Holy Knights here. Right?
Actually haven't.
You haven't?
I'm all ears.
Oh, okay. I'm going to tell you what some of the commoners are thinking right now then. Because it's going to mess with you. So you've got up the image of the Holy Knights?
Yes.
First and foremost, the silhouette in the middle.
Boy Shanks.
People have just taken that as Shanks.
Yep. Straight up. I mean, he did speak to the Celestial Dragons. It's like the most dead on the head thing.
So, I did a video today on TikTok. I'm not sure if I released it today or if it's for tomorrow, but by the time people are seeing this, I've got a video on TikTok, right? I actually broke down that picture a bit because that does look like Shanks, and I'm not disagreeing with that in any capacity, right? To the left of him, do you know who that looks like? Dragon.
Yeah.
And
See, I think I see horns there.
See, I see messy hair, not horns. Right? Because I think all of these people are humanoid, but to the left of Shanks, it looks like Dragon. The one in the middle looks like Shanks. But to the right of Shanks, we see a silhouette half his size, don't we?
Yeah.
I think that little silhouette is someone over 6 foot tall. I think these holy knights are as tall as the Gorosei, and in turn as tall as Katakuri. And that silhouette there that looks like Shanks, I think that is the leader of the Figureland family, being Shanks' father or brother, biologically speaking.
That would be interesting.
And we may get a nature versus nurture situation. Shanks was found as a baby and raised by Roger, right? Roger is who we would probably see as the most like morally right person arbitrarily in the pirating world, right? On the flip side of that, what would happen if he had a twin brother that was raised by Im and the Gorosei? Right?
Yeah.
It'd be like the same plotline that happened with Dofi and Rizante, but what happens if they're both comparable fighters? Right? To me, that would be really panicky. And like I said, One Piece characters tend to get taller the stronger they get, right?
Yeah.
Shanks is 6 foot. Dragon's 8.5 foot tall. So that still could be Dragon's silhouette there on the left. Right? But if I'm right and that dude on the right is 6 foot tall, right? The silhouettes still work for the one on the far right to be like the size of someone like Shanks, the one on the left to be the size of someone like Dragon at 8.5 foot, and then the other one to be close to 10 foot tall. Shanks' brother could be much taller than him. But do you know what else is really crazy? And I've done a little bit of research on this over the weekend. You talked about Shanks talking to the Gorosei, right? About a certain pirate.
Yeah.
We never saw Shanks' scar there.
Wait, what?
We never saw Shanks' scar on the Shanks that talked to the Gorosei.
Shanks has had that scar since well before he talked to the Gorosei.
Yep.
You're thinking that person that we saw then wasn't even Shanks to begin with.
It could possibly not be Shanks.
But didn't they call him Shanks?
No. They specifically said, you. We're really busy because of the reverie right now. Right? We made an exception because it's you.
Right.
If he's a holy knight, right? A holy knight would have nothing to do with the reverie, because the reveries are about the lower kingdoms, right? But we also know the holy knights, based on what Akainu said back a couple chapters ago, they're the enforcers. They're the real meat and potatoes of the celestial dragons, the combative celestial dragons, if anything. Or at least their judiciary system. Because this raises a good question, right? If the celestial dragons are gods and no one can, no one can deal with them, no one can criticize them in any capacity, right? If two of them disagree, how do you solve it? Well, you have to have a judiciary system made up of other celestial dragons, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I think these holy knights, and we see 9 silhouettes here, I'm going to say there's probably 9 or 10 of them. I'll probably lean more towards 10. Plus the Gorosei, if the Gorosei aren't included in here. Because some of those silhouettes could be Gorosei members just blended in, right?
I'll tell you what I'm thinking, though.
Yeah?
I'm thinking that the Gorosei, the 5 elder stars, are basically just the 5 best members of the God's Knights after they get old and retire.
Potentially.
That could lead towards basically, yes, the Gorosei are really strong because they literally used to be the God's Knights. But but now they're a little bit old and retired. So it's like Garp kind of thing, Garp level strength.
I could respect that.
Maybe not that same level of strength, but we don't know how strong the Gods Knights are. But
this actually raises something else here because I have a little bit of a crazy wild theory on this. Dragon's talking about these guys here, right? We see a swirl pattern behind them. Do you know that swirl pattern is only ever shown in relation to devil fruits? Like when Kaku and Khalifa ate their devil fruits?
Yeah, it's immediately what I thought is they've got some weird devil fruit stuff going on.
Right. If they're celestial...
And here's the thing, if I'm right, and if the Gorosei used to be God's Knights, I expect that we will see some hints towards that if we ever see Saturn do anything.
Yeah. So I'm on board with this. I'm on board with this, and I'm getting on the train, and I don't care if I'm leaving my dignity behind at the last stop, right? Because I don't just think that these guys are really tall. I think these guys all have devil fruits, and as celestial dragons that are combative, the weakest celestial dragon combative that we know of, that like actively trained, was Doflamingo. If you got 10 people of Doflamingo's level at minimum, that's impressive, right? But do you know what's scary? Dragon wasn't scared of the admirals. In this chapter, he's just like, oh yeah, we're handling the admirals as a matter of fact. Yeah. But he's worried about the Holy Knights.
Sure.
So you could argue he's worried about them because maybe he doesn't want to get involved with the Marines, so he doesn't view them as a threat in that regard. You could view that as these Holy Knights are maybe as strong or close to as strong as an admiral, which could be, very interesting, because the world government itself is just the Marines themselves are just a sub-branch of the world government, and I keep having to bring it back, right? The Gorosei said it best at the end of Dressrosa to Akainu's face. You're just the public face of the world government. We don't care how you feel. You just listen to what we say and we do what we want to do. And we've always questioned, if the world government is like full of such scummy people, why doesn't a good fleet admiral just kind of overthrow them one day? You know what I mean? And it could be very well because they've got their own high-tier group of enforcers on top of CP0 as their, fodder army that's pretty high-tier. But that's not the craziest thing here, because I'm going to take a wild crackpot theory here and say, Lelucia Kingdom and how it got wiped out?
Yeah.
I reckon that was one of the Holy Knights using their devil fruit. And I think...
Yeah, that's wild.
I know it's a really random take, and I'm going on the record now. It's like, I know it's headcanon. It's just there's nothing to base it on, right? But the 3 ancient weapons are all hidden at the moment, and we have nothing to say that any of the world government have ever gotten their hands on a single one of them, right? We also know the world government, until Vegapunk, never recreated any of the ancient kingdom's high tech. Right? That means whatever amused that national treasure of MARIJOA, right? Could very well have been one of the Holy Knights. And say Doflamingo himself didn't know about Im personally, right? Doflamingo still thought if he had Lord's Devil Fruit and could perform the personality switch, he would have been able to rule the world if he made it to MARIJOA. If he doesn't know about Im personally, which is very possible because we don't know who, if any, know about Im at the moment other than the Gorosei, right? It's very possible that he was actually talking in response to the leader of the Holy Knights currently. If they have some immeasurable amount of power. Right? Yeah. I'm hyped to find out more about these guys. And I think these guys are going to be very threatening. The Holy Knights, I'm not going to lie, when they were first brought up, I didn't think they were a faction. I thought it was the name of the fodder army that we saw back at Sabbaty. That Rayleigh just knocked out with a glance. But the fact that like dragons fretting about them here over the admirals has me sort of sitting here going, shit. And I mean, we see at least 9 silhouettes here. If we're getting to the point now where like, and I know this might upset a lot of people's headcanon and power scaling, but like power creep becomes a thing in series, right? If we're at the point where we've seen 1 Yonko go down pre-time skip, 2 Yonkos go down post-time skip, and we're now at the point where so many people are supposed to get that Yonko level in terms of like the new generation surpassing the old, they kind of need to have a level of injection of high tier people, and this makes a lot of sense here. You know what I mean?
This could actually get so bonkers. Like, these guys could all be like of the same race as Im.
Yeah.
And then like they could just be ridiculous, and then the whole series could just go well at like Dragon Ball level nearly at the end.
And like, again, I think it's one of those things where it's like Oda's been pretty tame up until now, which is why it's like when you piece stuff together of what people's abilities actually are, on paper, it's like these people seem a lot stronger than what we see. You know what I mean? Like, when I have conversations with people about this series, I'm very lenient in people going, oh, we've never seen them do this. And it's like, oh, no, we have. It's just, you got to be, like, hyper-focused on a detail that doesn't really matter for the most part. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Introducing 9 top tiers now could do wonders, because this could not just make more people in the Straw Hats have higher tier fights. Like, on the world government side, if you've got the 4 current admirals throwing Kong, so that's 5, and then these 9 dudes, right? That's 14 high tiers there. But then you've got the likes of Shanks, Blackbeard, Luffy, Crocodile, Mihawk, Zoro, Sanji, Law if he's still alive, Kid if he comes back. Like, we start getting to those numbers pretty quickly, don't we?
Yeah.
So it's like, it could be really interesting if this is an influx. And I know a lot of people would be like, you know, it came out of nowhere, it's really last minute. But I feel like for this specifically, these guys have probably been thought of for a while. The reason they haven't been hinted at is because Oda's done a really good job of not revealing any information with the Celestial Dragons up until now. They have been actually some of the biggest mysteries. For example, this chapter alone, and I'll skip to the next page now. This chapter alone shows the most Celestial Dragons we've ever seen in the story in one chapter. Like, the entire story of One Piece, up until now, doesn't have as many Celestial Dragons as appears in this one chapter on one page. So it's pretty wild.
The other thing as well is like it's interesting that like I could totally see them coming out, because I imagine a lot of the talking around the Celestial Dragons is basically just like they are gods. You know, that's like the whole narrative is like they're the gods, and so like I would imagine someone just being like, yeah, they have this secret knight organization that are all as powerful as a god, and it's like everyone's just like, oh yeah, okay, cool, like they're the gods, I get it, not really thinking about it that much.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's like actually true.
See, and that's the thing. The non-official translations labeled these gods knights. The official translation labeled them the holy knights. The holy knights translation, I don't know whether it's more or less accurate, but considering it was translated like that back when Akainu was, they may have done it just out of consistency, right?
I reckon like the Japanese word that they use is like divine or something like that, you know, something like religious-y,
But if you go from the mindset of gods knights, right, all that says to me is they're knights that are gods. So they are celestial dragons that are all combative.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which I think a lot of people, like, I gotta be really careful with saying this, right? The celestial dragons that we know of today and that we see now are all scum, for the most part. But in the past, they thought they were the good guys. And they had the power, at least in terms of their rulers, to come together and defeat what we now know is super advanced future technology. So they need something to be able to combat the ability to turn invisible, shoot light at people, create devil fruits, remove someone's soul from their body. That's what these guys are supposed to be, like, having overthrown.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that's really telling, right? Next thing I want to bring up is this newspaper about Cobra's death and Saba standing next to him. The only thing I'll say on this for the moment is look at the floor. It is a checkered floor, and Cobra has been knocked from his chair, and it looks like he's bleeding from his stomach. Right?
Yeah.
I'll come back to that later. Now we finally join the flashback, and this flashback is beautiful because it shows my goddamn favorite Revolutionary Army member. So we have the Celestial Dragons running around screaming, going, "Oh my god, help, no, we're getting attacked by the Revolutionaries, not the gourmet food, whatever will we do?" And then we cut to this one dude whipping the shit out of a pirate. I actually thought this was Peachbeard at first, but it's not. It's just some random new dude, right? Karasu swoops a bird in, steals a gun off the Celestial Dragon, grabs the gun, and then uses his Karasut to attack. To go tell the guy to leave. And we see him get riddled with holes. And we get the confirmation that Karasu's fruit is the Soot fruit. That is a fucking badass fruit. I love it for his design, and I love it for just what it actually means for him as a combatant. And I love it because we don't get enough scenes like this, but I keep having to reiterate to people, right? Logias can become their element, create their element, and telekinetically control their element. And it's been like that since the beginning of the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Karasu here telekinetically controls his element and does his Obelisuts to impale or cut all these guys down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm breaking this up into two conversation pieces. One talking about Karasu, one talking about other people. For Karasu here, I'm really curious because Soot can be so versatile. You know what I mean? It's just activated. It's just activated carbon, but he's able to make constructs from it. He's able to hurt people from it. He's able to turn it into a mist. So could he make people breathe it in, and they're breathing in toxic soot and pass out? Because that's good crowd control. Could he cut someone and get soot in their blood and it poison them? Because that's a good durability negation, right? That fruit has a really interesting versatility there. Also, I wonder if the reason why he has the speaker plague doctor mask is specifically because when he's in his when he's using his soot, you may not be able to hear him properly. He may need the speaker to actually emphasize the sound through the soot cloud. Or to potentially stop him breathing in poisonous gas in some capacity. If the soot is able to actually do other things, being activated carbon, it could ionize other chemicals and stuff like that, and that could be actually to protect him. That's the Karasu bit. The second bit is, I cannot wait, because again, I'm just going to outright say this is a Logia, right? We're not questioning that this is a Logia?
This is a Logia.
Damn right. More specifically, though, these feats that we're getting for Logias right now, because again, we haven't had a lot of Logias, let alone Logia feats in One Piece, especially post-time skip, right? These feet right now, can you imagine what happens when this is Akainu? When Akainu makes multiple hands come out of the surrounding area and try to strike people because he's telekinetically controlling his element, and it's all as potent as his hand touching someone's face.
Yeah.
The crowd control is going to go wild, and all this amazing stuff that we're seeing from Karasu here, you got to think, although this devil fruit could be really harmful to people in like a long-term effect, soot isn't something that has a byproduct of being in its vicinity immediately hurts you. Right? So all the abilities we see from Karasu here, we've just got to upscale other Logies that are better in terms of what they would have been capable of had they actually been able to showcase it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I agree.
Good. Because up next is where I actually go a little crazy, right? We see a laser shooter, and we see Lindbergh shooting a light laser to destroy handcuffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pre-time skip, back in Sabbaty, the Straw Hats got separated by Bartholomew Kuma, right? One pacifista disappeared, though, and we never found out where it went. I kind of have a feeling that Kuma sent it to Lindbergh, and he disassembled the pacifista and recreated the technology, and he's made a rifle of the pacifista laser. The crazy thing about that is that could actually become a weapon that he's replicated for the revolutionaries when they go into combat. Moreover, Lindbergh's a smart dude, right? We've seen recently that the likes of Chopper can make a rumble ball that activates Sulong form, yeah? Can you imagine if we see Lindbergh, whether it's by making an artificial moon or something that triggers his moon reflex or a rumble ball himself, can you imagine a Sulong mink blipping around, speed blitzing around, repeatedly shooting a light laser rifle at you? Like he's a Jedi.
Not to mention he has binoculars that let you see like basically to the horizon.
Yeah. So Lindbergh could be one of those crazy sleeper characters right now. Because, and like a lot of people are like, oh, you know, it's a light laser. It's not, you know, it's not that impressive. I mean, he was able to shoot it here and it only cut the handcuffs, right? But every other character's lasers, like Queen's strongest attack was his light lasers.
Mm-hmm.
If he can use his laser cannon here to be as strong as Queen's lasers, he's as strong at least as a 2nd Division commander here, right?
I mean, he's slicing through like metal like it's butter.
Yeah.
It's just a clean. He's literally just like basic. So the difference that I think he has over a pacifista laser is it seems like it's a steady beam.
Yeah, I think this is actually more refined.
A line with it.
I think this is more refined in the sense that he can control its intensity.
So, like, I don't think he's actually shooting, like, a projectile. I think he's actually firing a laser beam.
Mm.
And he's literally able to basically just draw with it. And he'll just be, like, cutting. Because he's literally shot the ground and then he's, like, dragged the laser. You can see in the thing there's, like, a puff of smoke in a line. And he's, like, cut across the metal. So, realistically, he could, like, fire this at you and then just, like, follow you with it. And it'll just be, like, a beam constantly hitting you of this laser that's cutting into you.
Which could be wild, especially when in Sulong form, they're able to... Like, we know Sulongs are really fast.
If someone's just holding a lightsaber on you.
Yeah. So, this could lead to some crazy attacks here. Right? Also, going back to Karasu here. So, we see Karasu going up against Fujitora a bit. And throughout this whole chapter, we actually see that the revolutionaries versing the admirals didn't involve Sabo.
Yeah, here's the thing. When I was reading through this at first, my mindset was, holy crap, if Sabo wasn't involved in this fight, and it was literally just like one commander versus one admiral, this is going to look so good for the commanders and so bad for the admirals. But then as I kept reading, thankfully, they did do a pretty good job of making it sure that like the admirals are definitely stronger than them.
Yeah, they're stronger than them. They're nerfed in the environment, right?
Yeah, and it was even, and they were even saying like, wow, the commanders are doing really well. So it's like not only would the admirals normally be able to beat them anyway, but also this is a particularly good showing from the commanders.
I gotta raise something here, just in regards to Karasu and Karasu's crows, right?
Hmm?
Karasu is the revolutionary northern commander, right? So unless he's on special duty, he would be in the North Blue.
Yep.
The entire communication network outside of Denden Mushi for the Revolutionary Army uses Karasu's crows. And we've seen this.
Yeah.
When Robin got separated from the Straw Hats, we saw Karasu's crow giving intel to the Marines in East Blue. When Sabo was in Dressrosa, Karasu picked him up, but also, apparently Karasu hadn't come to the New World yet, when we later got the introduction of the Revolutionary Commanders. Right? They'd only just gathered into the New World. Or into the Grand Line. Right? Meaning he's able to spread himself across the planet. Not completely across the planet, but like send emissaries of his crows to the far reaches of the planet and still be in complete utter control of them. That is a fucking ridiculous feat in range. Because probably while he's here fighting, he's still technically the information network for a lot of the revolutionary outposts. Whether that was done directly or indirectly, like whether it was like intentional or not, we see the revolutionaries using his crows, and we now know his crows are just a part of his body that he's separated. So that is definitely something wild to think about in the back of your mind. You know what I mean? Because if this man is able to spread himself out that thin, and like we know that Logias are able to replicate multiple parts of their own body. We see it in the Smoker versus Virgo fight. Smoker's able to make like 7 or 8 fists out of his stomach to punch people. You know what I mean? So it's not like they this Karasu here, I'm going to assume is the real Karasu. But just because this is the real Karasu here doesn't mean that there isn't like a Karasu somewhere else doing shit as well, based on his devil fruit. He's able to split himself up essentially, and essentially make crow clones out of soot. That is wild. Then we move to his Soul Lotus attack. So he attacks Fujitora, and then we cut away from Fuji for a second. And we see Morley doing amazing against Green Bull, don't we?
Hang on, his Soul Lotus attack, is that the one where he's like firing tons of crows at him?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the translation for the unofficial is Rencon.
Rencon? Yeah, okay. In the official, it says Crow Soul Lotus. And, I mean, low-key, I think Fujitora completely blocked these. I think he made, like, a gravity barrier. Because if you actually look, there's crows in front of him, crows behind him. But then there's, like, impact zones all around him where nothing's touching him.
Yeah, I think he's cutting them all. Because so the way that I took this is if you look behind him, all of those crows are cut in half. All of the crows that have already passed him have been cut. And then in front of him, there's like one in front of him that you can see, or two in front of him that you've seen have already been cut. And then there's projectile slashes still coming out.
Wait!
So it's almost like not only is he cutting every crow, but he's like going so quick that he's even firing projectiles to cut crows that are even further in front.
Wait, if that's the case, then why isn't Karasu hurt?
True.
I guess you'd have to say he's either not using armament haki.
I mean, this would be the equivalent of like pheasant, like blue pheasant from Kiji.
No,
right?
because
these could be projectiles.
Karasu's crows seemingly is him making, like, he's turning his body into the crow.
But maybe it's like sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Because remember, he is a Logia, so he can just like fire soot at people.
True.
Maybe he just fires soot in the shape of a crow in this scenario.
True. I mean, we do see his main form there off to the right. And, like, we see, like, the holes in him where he's shot parts of his stuff out. But maybe you're right. Maybe his soul is clearly that part on the right side that's retaining that rough shape. And these are just him projecting out his soot. Hence why they can be cut and it not hurt him. But that is something very interesting to keep in the back of your mind there. Because maybe he's got an advanced form of observation haki as well. Because if that is part of his body going in there, maybe that's him, controlling it. Because if that's the case, and it's just him shooting them out. I wonder if all Logias are capable of turning their element into an animal to fight.
Yeah, true. It's really interesting that like
Because
okay, I think maybe Mud Guy is the only Logia we've had that hasn't been, or and maybe Sabo and Sabonace, I guess. Because Monet was like the harpy, right?
well,
And then
she actually
all of the
used bunny
admirals have had
attacks.
like, yeah, right, true. And then all of the admirals have had like the red dog and the blue pheasant. I guess Yellow Monkey hasn't had any animal related attack yet,
I
as
would
far as I remember.
I would argue with Kizaru though. Like, okay, Kizaru's fruit exists in a very odd concept, right? You have we know that there are lesser Logias and greater Logias, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So like ice to snow, fire to magma, right? But even in that,
Mm-hmm.
we have solid liquid gases and then concepts, right? Light and darkness is a concept Logia. You know, they don't take
Mm-hmm.
a physical shape necessarily. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Gas, you've got the likes of like Smoker and Caesar, right?
Oh my God, there's a lot of Logias, isn't there?
Yeah,
Damn.
yeah. Solids, you've got the likes of Caribou, right? And oh, sorry, no, Caribou is more of a liquid than a solid. He's a semi-solid, right? Because like I did a video on this recently because it's really hard. I can't remember the exact terminology I used to like deliberate them, but it's like you have concepts. Out of the Logias, the concepts are light and darkness, right? Then you've got
Mm-hmm.
the solids or semi-solids, right? Our Kiji is a solid. His ice has to shatter. You don't pass through it, he shatters, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got like a straight up liquid esque Logia, right? Where you just morph around stuff, right? But then you've also got a Logia like Kizaru, who's not a solid or a liquid because he's a concept, right? We actually see he's able to control his photons, but he turns into his element. He doesn't, like, if you hit him, there's no reaction. You know what I mean? Whereas like something
Mm-hmm.
like fire, fire itself is a reaction in a weird way. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like based on the Logias we've seen, the ones that have actual animal attacks, we have Akainu's Hellhound, Aokiji's Pheasant Beak, and then Karasu's Soot Crows. Apart from that, all other Logias haven't actually used an animal to attack outside of Monet, who used snow bunnies in her attacks, right? So those 4 people have animal-based attacks. Every other Logia doesn't have an animal-based attack yet. But that could just imply that they're not as good at using their Logia. Like they haven't unlocked the true nature of their Logia or something.
Mm-hmm.
Which would be interesting because it's like if you're assigning an animal to each of these elements, it'd be really hard. You'd have to say monkey for Kizaru, right? Because yellow monkey. But in that regard, if he ever did an animal-based attack, it'd be really interesting. Like, would he just create a monkey construct out of light that attacked with like a light staff, like it's Sun Wukong?
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm starting to get a blocked nose here, so I'm sorry if I start sounding different. Alright, moving on though. We got Morley here, and Morley's fighting Greenbull. He's cut off Greenbull's hand and impaled another hand, but he's not using Haki, so it doesn't hurt Greenbull in any capacity, right?
Gotta say though, it's really impressive that in one clash he's lopped off an arm and stabbed through the other hand.
Well, this is where I actually have to bring up another conversation piece with you, alright? Because Greenbull's huge here, right? And we even see on the left hand of the panel, we see Greenbull's silhouette when compared to the castles, right? And he's twice the size of the castle gates in that, right?
Yeah.
Remember at the beginning of the chapter when I asked you how tall is Morley?
Yeah, yeah.
Morley wasn't so tall at the beginning of the chapter that his bicep was a 3-story building. So either Oda has done a really bad job at size scaling here, which is like it is very reasonable to happen, right? Or in some capacity, Morley can change his height,
Mm.
which would be really interesting because like we don't know what that jetpack looking thing is on Morley's back, do we?
Oh.
He's got the push fruit, so he can push anything. Maybe he can push stuff into his body to increase his size.
Mm.
It'd be interesting. I don't want to read too much into it because again, it could just be simple shit scaling for size. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But I love the idea here that he's turned the entirety of the city pushable, like liquid clay. And Green Bull is fighting here at such a disadvantage because not only does Green Bull fight mainly by like changing the surrounding area and helping it attack, as most Logis do, but the poor bastard can't do it because the surrounding area is the Celestial Dragon's hometown, and anytime he moves, he runs the risk of killing Celestial Dragons here, while Morley is just making the entire area even more dangerous for the Celestial Dragons. This is like the ultimate handicap here. And I absolutely love it, right? And then I even love the idea that Fujitori's here, and he's just like, shit, we'll bring down a meteor strike. What does it matter? You know what I mean? He's just like, yeah, we'll nuke him. Who cares, right? And they say to admirals, if this weren't the land of the gods, they could have wiped the map clean between the two of them. And we know that for a fact. We've seen Punk Hazard. Two admirals can clear out an entire landscape really easily. But you got to give props where props are due. The revolutionary captains here came in fucking clutch and they did amazingly. Do you think they're all going to get a bounty raise because of this?
I mean, yeah, for sure.
Yeah? Do you think it's going to be substantial?
Yes, because I mean, like the revolutionaries are literally stopping the
Celestial Dragons.
Yeah, the transport of goods, the food.
Because
it's gonna be skyrocketing.
Morley's bounty is 292 at the moment. I feel like a lot of these revolutionaries, even though we may not like it, they might just get a clean bill berry increase.
Yeah. I honestly reckon before the end of this saga, First Division Commander bounties are going to look like nothing. Like the 1 billion is going to be like so lightly, like so easily overdone.
Jack's 1 billion berry bounty isn't in the top 20 or top 30. I can't remember which one. He's not in the top 20 or 30 bounties anymore.
Yeah.
And he was the number one for like a good few years.
Yeah.
We also get introduced to the post-time skip introduction of CP9, now known as CP0. Also, these guys don't have masks, so you can infer that they're weaker than the rest of CP0. I love that we finally get to see Jabra. I miss him. I'm glad that he's not dead. I kind of hope, just like Kaku and Lucci, he gets like a small rematch against Sanji in some capacity, right? Because he's one of those guys that I was just like, I just wanted them to give him a little bit more love. I know he's not as good as the other two, but I loved the wolf fruit and he made it so cool and his Chinese aesthetic was amazing.
And the other thing was like, he had that ability of like, I'm the only one who can use body hardening and still move around. That to me is like, that's a sick feat.
He was the best armament user out of them.
Exactly. That's like a mad feat to me. That's like, I don't know, like that, like okay, assuming we don't know anything about Haki, assuming Haki was never a thing, it's like OP as hell.
Yeah.
Like if you can master that and have like just as good level body hardening as like Lucci had, and then still be able to move around, you just like no one can beat you kind of thing.
Well, it'd be amazing.
Obviously now it's kind of nothing, but
well, yeah, but
back
now
then, that was awesome.
But now I question whether or not he'd be able to use advanced armament and stuff like that, unlike Kaku.
Yeah.
Because that would be an interesting turn of events there for him, to say the least. Then we cut to Sabo. Sabo's running through MARIJOA, trying to free as many slaves as he can, and Kuma. We see that Kuma is still under the guard of Saint Roswald and Charlos, who are after Shirahoshi. Shirahoshi we see talking to someone that we don't know. I'm going to just assume that that's Mancherry still, that she's talking to. The Tontara Queen. Or Princess. We see Bonnie running, and then we cut to the port. The rocky port, but up the top of it. Vivi and Lucci having an altercation. Will you leave me alone? I'm going to ask Vice Admiral Garp for help. But we are here to protect you. Well, it certainly didn't look that way with Shirahoshi back there. You're not stupid. You know they'll go after her again. Right? So, to me, Vivi here in the official translation is very different to the scanlation, right? In the official translation, it really seems like she's trying to help Shirahoshi here and just preemptively get Garp as a bodyguard. And we know that Garp don't give a F, so that's amazing, right? After that, though, we see this scene with Cobra. Pell and Chaka aren't allowed in to meet the Gorosei, only Cobra is, right? Look at the floor underneath Cobra. Notice how it is a square tiled floor. Do you see that there? Now I go back a few pages, back to pages 8 and 9, where Cobra is dead on a square tiled floor. I don't know if Cobra even makes it in to this room before he dies, or if CP0 finger pistol him and kill him, and that's why he's bleeding from the stomach, and he just dies on the floor out the front of the room. And they just use Sabo as a good explanation to explain why he's dead, and just roll with it and run from there. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. Obviously, there is the whole thing of like the floor could just be the same inside the room.
Yeah, definitely, most definitely. Although, there's something else that's important here. We don't know roughly when this is, but assuming these scenes are playing out one after another sort of thing, in that room right now could currently be the person that looks like Shanks, whether that is Shanks or isn't.
Yeah.
So, we may get a little bit more as to the certain pirate conversation here too, which would be very interesting to say the least. You know what I mean?
That is very true.
Next chapter, I think we have to keep on this flashback. I think what this is actually doing right now, and I'm gonna say this with the utmost confidence I have right now. I don't know if we're cutting back to Egghead for a little bit, but I think Bonnie reading Kuma's memories at the moment and this flashback are all coinciding, because you know how most arcs you've got the like dramatic tension and the rise, and then you get the payoff of the conflict.
Yeah.
We're already at the conflict stage where the conflict is the Egghead Island incident, right?
Yep.
All this is the thematical through line and the importance of the arc, where I think all these flashbacks and events happening around the world are going to directly inform the emotions behind the Egghead Island incident. And it's going to be another example of, say, Luffy at Sabaody punching the Celestial Dragons, and people like Boa being like, oh my god, he's amazing because he did that, even though Luffy didn't do it for the likes of, say, Boa.
Yeah.
And it's going to be one of those moments where all these things that are just coincidentally happening around the world make whatever happens at Egghead feel vindicated. But this is essentially... this is the climax of the Egghead arc. All these things. The Reverie, Kuma's flashback, Kuma arriving at MARIJOA, and it's all going to engulf in Luffy and whatever the Egghead Island incident is. Whether that's... we've never really talked about this, but whether that's that Saturn and Kizaru end up wiping out the Straw Hats again, or the Straw Hats just shit on them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I've got to ask you, because I haven't really asked. because we never really considered it, right? Because we're so close to the end of the story that it's like it's kind of inconceivable for the Straw Hats to have a complete defeat again, right? What would you do if seemingly Kizaru and Saint J. Garcia win against the Straw Hats?
I don't really see it happening.
You can't conceive of it?
Not really.
Because I agree. I can't really, I can't see a way that the Straw Hats get beaten. Especially this close to the end, being the final saga, and how, happy it all is. You know what I mean?
Like, my only thought process is, get beaten, they get taken back to, Marineford, they somehow have, some kind of training arc in prison or some crap, and they, break out, and then that's how, the big fight at the end goes. But, at the same time, how do you jump from losing to one Gorosei and one Admiral to now beating Im and all of the Gorosei from the inside of MARIJOA,
It could be a matter of it, just hypothetically. You know how the crew got beaten by CP9 and then, in a extreme diff fight beat CP9 the following arc?
Yeah, but it's it's just too big of a jump.
Yeah.
Im, I'm assuming, is going to be next level.
Especially since, you get, the hype coming from, the Holy Knights and stuff like that.
By the way, just one thing to say, to add to your point about the Holy Knights and possibly destroying Lelouchia.
Yep.
If you think about it, if we're putting the Holy Knights as being a above Luffy threat that Luffy has to grow to overcome, essentially, then Luffy can create a fist large enough to destroy an entire island in one punch.
Yep.
With enough borrow breaths, Dragon could probably take out an island.
Kaido.
Whitebeard's fruit can take out an island, etc., etc. Yeah, if it's the right fruit that gives the right ability,
yeah,
could take out an island.
Well, we saw that those lasers came down and eviscerated the island, right?
What we saw from NL, if you make NL Yonko level, he can destroy an island.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, island level, you got the likes of physicality, where people like Don Shinjao are splitting continents, right? When it comes to devil fruits, people will be like, oh, they're only island level, they're not that strong. But it's like, dude, they're only island level, but who wants to destroy an island? Really? You know what I mean? But when push comes to shove, we see these people decimating islands. Punk Hazard, right? Do you know what's really crazy to me about Punk Hazard? Do you remember the lake in the middle? There's a lake in the middle of Punk Hazard, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's deep. Sanji, Kinemon torso fell in the lake, and Sanji skywalked, blue walked, but skywalked through the water, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was a good couple hundred meters down and hadn't hit the bottom, right? Do you know what the crazy thing about Punk Hazard is? That lake is the epicenter of Akainu and Kaido's duel. That lake didn't exist there before their fight. That's where they were fighting. And the rest of the island changing, that was a byproduct of their fight, not the fight itself.
Yep.
They burrowed below sea level, and their fight was so intense, whether the ice or the lava was so intense that the sea that had split the island in half, because they split the island in half while clashing, right? Hence why they made a sea river. The water couldn't flow down to them because it was either frozen or burning while they're fighting. And whenever they finished their fight, they would have had to leave that big hole they made in the center of the island.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's chapter... it's 654 or something like that, right? We see a Sea King get brought up to the water. The Straw Hats bring a Sea King up to the tops of the surface near Punk Hazard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just being out in the air on top of the water, the Sea King spontaneously combusts and melts. And they're still kilometers away from Punk Hazard. So for the people that are out there that are like you, oh, you know, the abilities of One Piece, they're not that strong. They're not destroying whole islands. When have we ever seen someone destroying a whole island? It's like, dude, have you ever seen like a creature whose face is 100 meters tall spontaneously combust and melt in seconds, kilometers away from the epicenter of a fight?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that shit is fucking wild to think about like that. You know what I mean? And like,
Oh yeah, and another one to add, Fujitora could just summon a meteor that does an island.
this is actually a little bit funny, right? Because I did a video reply to someone just talking about a few points of that, because they were like, Naruto and Sasuke in Marineford, who wins? And my question is, if you took one of the Yonko and put them in the position of the Allied Shinobi forces in Naruto's series, could they win, right? And you know what I thought was the funniest response to it? Kaido just uses his flame clouds to lift up the Ten Tails God Tree and just throws it into space. No war. You can't fight over anything at that point, right? Is that not hilarious? He's just like, bye. It's gone. We ain't dealing with it. I'm sorry, we're not dealing with it anymore. You want to fight me, you can fight me, but I got rid of the problem. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's stupid, but it's funny. But like, yeah, I don't know. How do you actually feel about my idea of the Holy Knights being responsible for the Lucia?
Like, it's possible. I don't know. I kind of feel like it was like a specific thing. Also, like, I don't know. It seems like Dragon has a little bit of like information on the Holy Knights, and he didn't reference, like, he didn't tie them together at all.
Yes. See, I got slightly different vibes from, because this is my first time reading through the Viz, right? I got slightly different vibes from the unofficial translation, where Dragon talking about it made it seem like they were the threat of the world government. You know what I mean? More than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in this, it's just kind of like he's just like, oh, you know, the fighting will start if they mobilize them. You know what I mean? But he's still obviously hyping them up.
Yeah.
The problem I have is, we know we saw what happened to Lelucia Kingdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was already happening before Saba, before they knew Saba was there. So Im just decided we've got to get rid of Lelucia Kingdom for whatever reason, right? Part of it is like, do they really have like, because it looked like a big space station, right? Like a big straw hat in the sky that rained down light and destroyed the island. Is that more far-fetched than just someone with a broken devil fruit that's on their payroll? You know what I mean? Like, it could be something ridiculous, because like, we know the light fruit's already taken, right? Or, I mean, shit, do you know what? That actually could be even more problematic there, right? We've never seen the same devil fruit appear more than once, right?
Right.
But what if that's not because they can't be done, but just because the ancient kingdom didn't do it? Like, what if, like, you know how much I love Kizaru, right?
Yeah.
What if one of the Holy Knights has Kizaru's light fruit as well, but they're just like got the OG better version? Just sending out some colossal light that just destroys an island. If, I mean, and I know, like, I'm leaning on it being a Holy Knight, not Kizaru, but I mean, shit, you could even say that was Kizaru himself then, technically, considering it was light. You know what I mean? I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling on it. It's one of those things where it's just like, we're at a stage now where, like, Oda's just been pulling out so many crazy things that it's like the roof is really the limit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Alright. Give me 2 seconds. I'll be back in 1 second, alright? I'm just going to throw it on an intermission so you don't have to worry about talking, and I'll be right back, okay?
Okay.
Sorry about that. My nose was completely blocked then. Alright.
By the way, with this bit at the end, with King Cobra going in to talk to them,
Yes.
does it not seem to you like it's pretty much like, to me, he knows he's gonna die.
Yep.
It's almost like he's doing that heroic thing of like he's smiling as he accepts it, and he's going in and he's literally saying, "Oh, don't worry about me. I don't need your help. Look out for Vivi. She's always a mischievous one. You can't let her out of your sight." That's like this translation. He's literally just being like, "Keep an eye on Vivi for me. Don't worry about me. Go look after her. Keep an eye on her for me. Don't let her get up to any trouble." Like it's literally like, "Take care of my daughter. I'm gonna go die."
I think because he's already on the verge of death, right, with his illness.
Yeah.
I think this is him like, oh, I'm gonna die from this, but I'm gonna see if I can get an answer before I die.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's almost like he's literally just gone, "Hey, I'm gonna say what I've always wanted to say because it's gonna be my last chance."
And see, in the viz, what we hear from him is, this will not take long. And then there's a pause. But I don't want you to be waiting around getting bored. Go and stand watch over Vivi instead. I can't help but worry over that tomboy daughter of mine. Right? We already know that they were looking at getting rid of Cobra. Right? We saw that at the
I love
Reverie.
that the official translation is tomboy when people like say that's like bad now.
Ah, it is what it is. I mean, look, she wants to be the pirate queen. That was her dream. We saw that way back when, right? So, VVX Luffy coming. Sorry, Boa. I'm a Boa stand through and through, but I mean, if that happened, I'd be like, ugh, okay, whatever. VV's with Morgan's right now. Oh, there's got. Did we ever find out what Wobble told Morgan? What that like intel was?
I don't think so, no.
Ooh, this is shaping up to be really interesting because do you know what? You know, I was saying all the flashbacks and that may coincide with the plot thread of Egghead, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vivi was present for this stuff in MARIJOA and wanted to tell Luffy something about Sabo. I wonder if Bonnie saw Sabo see someone on the empty throne. That could be really interesting.
Yeah, true.
Because if Sabo reveals what he saw on the empty throne to Dragon, and Dragon's talking about the Holy Knights targeting Sabo specifically, you could have Bonnie come out of this flashback with Kuma, and when she gets the chance, she says to Luffy, "You really should go check on your brother." And he's like, "Oh, don't worry. He's living his own adventure. I don't need to interfere." And she's like, "No, you don't understand. He's targeted for assassination." And then that could drag the Straw Hats to try and find the revolutionaries at the moment, which we have a contact with Sanji and Ivankov.
Oh.
That could work out really well in a weird way. I don't know. Dude, it's crazy how political a story about a rubber pirate is. Like, as much as I love Luffy in that, it's like the best parts of this story really have nothing to do with the piracy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's just building a world.
Oh, it's amazing. Uh, that being said, so back in the 900s when we first saw the Reverie, right? I can't remember what chapter it is. It might be 903 or 904 or 5. Oh, what a beautiful world. We get to the top of the red line and we saw all those statues. And there were 5 statues left and right on each hallway, right? And there's like
Right.
Bay 1 and 2. So there's 20 in total, which like I theorized back at the time them being the 20 kingdoms. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what would be a really interesting but crazy thought? What if the Holy Knights are people in the Celestial Dragons that had the immortality surgery performed on them?
Okay.
And because we've only ever seen Bay 2 of the gondolas, like the gondolas thing, they could have been like the statues themselves when we see them revealed. We could see them marry up with statues because we actually see one of the statues have the same sword as like Shanks and this silhouette here. Which in turn as well, I wonder if this dude here, because there's only one of these dudes with a sword, right? I wonder if he has a supreme grade blade as well.
Yeah.
I'm stuck in theory mode now because there's just too much stuff to go on. I already want the next chapter to be out, man. There's not a break next week, is there? Because I know that was like Golden Week and that, so I'm not sure. I think we got this chapter both early and late. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have any theories for next chapter?
I have no idea, to be honest. I think we could go back to the Straw Hats, but we could also see what is going to go on with um, Vivi's dad, if they want to actually reveal that, or that could be another thing that's kept for even later.
I
Yeah.
I think we pick up with Vivi's dad in the meeting. And then some more stuff with Sabo. And then in a really weird twist of events, I think Kamabaka Queendom gets attacked. Because remember, when Leloucia was being attacked, we had the surveillance network know that Sabo was talking to Kamabaka Queendom and Dragon.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting if during this flashback, as we get more information, right before this part with Sabo gives us the juicy details, if the Kamabaka Queendom gets attacked on a counter attack.
Yeah, right.
And then we pick up the second half of the flashback through Bonnie. Because I feel like that could be a cool way to juggle it. You know what I mean? Because you're getting all these split perspectives of the same story, but we're like jumping between them as like other major events are happening at the moment and moving around at the moment. Because because even thinking about, because like you really have to just drag all this stuff back in line with the Reverie, right? So like I've got to go back and reread the Reverie, honestly, but like you've got the kingdoms that came together. They had 170 kingdoms. We know that 12 rebelled, right? So 1/17 of the entire world government just disbanded. That's pretty wild.
True.
Right? So 1/17 of the world government's power just got done in by the revolutionaries. They had 8 successful coups, 4 failed coups, and 1 kingdom just completely wiped off the map. Then, you had the princess stuff with Shirahoshi and Vivi and all that. We don't know how Vivi ends up escaping with Wapple and Morgan at this point. So I feel like that'll be part of the flashback. But the fact that Lucci's standing over Vivi, I wonder if Lucci's actually sent there to guard her and then assassinate her when given the order. Which will fail. Because we have that scene with Im where he had a photo of Luffy, Blackbeard, Shirahoshi, and Vivi, and they were asking him what light he wanted to extinguish, right? But we know that Shirahoshi made it back down to the seafloor, and Blackbeard and Luffy are still pretty well fine at the moment.
Yeah.
So we haven't had any payoff of those 4 characters as to who Im's targeting.
I mean, what if we get like a flash? Like, what if we cut back to like Lucci and Luffy fighting, and Lucci's like, "I'm not going to screw up this. Like, I'm going to take you out, Straw Hat. I'm not going to screw up again like I did with Vivi." And then Luffy's like, "What the hell did you do to Vivi?" And we get a little bit of information through there.
We could.
Like before we actually see what happens to King Cobra, we see what happens on Vivi's end and how she got out alive.
Luffy and Lucci sort of teamed up at the moment, so do you know what would be really interesting with that? If he drops a comment about Vivi, and you know how Luffy said to him, once you're free, you're not just going to turn on us, right?
Yeah,
As soon as Luffy hears that he did something to Vivi, Luffy starts to attack. And then Lucci's like, you're breaking our truce. This is done.
Yeah.
Because then that could keep the conflict going there with them for a little bit before they deal with the whole actual Egghead Island incident. Because then the last 2 big things to really look at is, for argument's sake, say it is Shanks and not a Holy Knight, right? Who's the pirate he wanted to talk about? Because there still hasn't been a payoff on that, has there?
True.
But we also know at the moment, canonically, Shanks is trying to target Blackbeard, right?
Yeah.
He's got his intel network trying to track down Blackbeard. What? Oh, shit! Yo, what if Shanks gets word that Garp is fighting the Blackbeard pirates? And we get a Shanks and Garp team up.
That would be cool.
That would be a really left field team up, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And then we could have Suru and Sengoku come in as reinforcements, and we may get the Blackbeard pirates driven off Hajinosu. Or see Blackbeard actually fight all out. Okay. Blackbeard, Aokiji, and Shiryu. Could they take out old Garp, old Sengoku, and Shanks? On some sneaky home turf shit.
Possibly, yeah.
With some Evaldo Pizarro turning the island against them, making holes and sucking down people so they get sucker punched. Because if you had... Okay. There's too many fucking things at play right now. It's hard to keep track of everything, you know what I mean? Because at the moment, so Buggy just declared that he's going for the One Piece, right? So they're the only major organization right now that doesn't have any poneglyphs, right?
Right.
If they were to get poneglyphs off any group, what group would they get them off?
I know. Probably Luffy.
Off Luffy, you reckon? Because do you know what could be a fucking wild scenario? If Shanks goes to help Garp and that, and they're having a huge conflict on Hajinosu, and Cross Guild shows up, and people think it's going to turn the tides of the war, and Buggy takes that opportunity to rob Shanks while he's in conflict of the poneglyphs.
Yeah, okay.
And so it's not like at any point in time they were more skilled or stronger than them. It's just straight up they were preoccupied, so they got robbed.
Yeah.
And you could even have it where Blackbeard's trying to entice Crossguild to assist because the Marines that are present would all have high bounties with Crossguild. Garp, Sengoku, Suru. It'd be the three most legendary heroes of the Marines in one spot. That would
Yeah.
be some pretty fucking heavy clout chasing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
Would, if Garp, Sengoku, and Suru all got taken down together, would that have a bigger impact on the world than Whitebeard going down?
I mean, probably not, to be honest.
You don't reckon?
No, like it'd be interesting, but like,
Because we
no.
see, at least with Garp has islands under his protection just like Yonko. Where he puts his, like, he has like a wooden flag that he bangs down saying property of Garp.
Yeah.
So you could see like all these islands that are like quote unquote under the protection of Garp all of a sudden start having pirates start to invade, no different to what happened to Whitebeard when Whitebeard went down.
Yeah, that's true.
And that would be like a pretty like painful twist of events, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like it doesn't matter good or bad, intentions being good or bad either. It's like, you know, once the legend gets dispersed, greed is greed.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Okay. Does this flashback end with Sabo getting a bounty reveal, you reckon?
I don't know. Yeah. Maybe.
Give me your shot. What do you reckon the Rev's bounties are?
I mean, I reckon they could all just go up to like 1.5 bill. All the commanders.
I reckon
It's. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'd have to think about it heaps, right? Because it's probably some kind of play on words, like how Oda does it, right?
if I were to give it a rough number, this is gonna get me in some shit here. I for the longest thought Dragon's individual bounty, being the highest bounty in the world, is gonna be 6.66 bill. Being like, you know, the mark of the devil sort of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being a D, so 6,660,000,000, which is 1.11 bill higher than Gold Rogers, right?
Yeah.
Sabo, at the moment, being the Flame Emperor, and the way that they're talking about him being more troublesome than Luffy, I reckon you got to at least give him a bounty similar to Mihawk, right? At that 3.5 sort of bill range.
Okay.
Then we go down. And also, like, I need to point this out, right? You know how at the beginning of the chapter we had the Doflamingo, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about this a lot, and a lot of people forget about this. So this is your reminder, girls and boys. Doflamingo's list of the strongest revolutionaries was Dragon, Sabo, Ivankov, Morley. Just reiterating that, right? When Doflamingo talked about how strong the Revs were, the only one of the commanders that he talked about was Morley.
Mm-hmm.
And we see Morley fighting Green Bull at the moment. I'm just saying, right? But if I were to give them like crazy bounties, like I know Bella Betty currently has a 450 mil bounty. I could see her not getting an increase from this because she wasn't involved in any capacity, right? Or if she does, she gets like a standard increase bounty. Say it doesn't move and she stays at 450, I'd say she has the lowest bounty out of all the revolutionary commanders going into the final arc, even though she had the highest on introduction out of them. The reason for it, she just wasn't involved, and also it's like Oda just playing with the dynamic of it. You know what I mean? I could see Karasu, Morley, and Lindbergh getting at least a 600 mil increase. Up to and potentially including a 1 bill increase. I think that would have been the crazy thing about it. You know what I mean? That'd be because, like, if you give him 600 mil, right? All of a sudden, Lindbergh's at 915 mil. He's got a bounty equivalent of Robin's, right? You've got Lindbergh, Morley, who's a little bit less. His bounty would have been that 892 mil, which is still huge, right? That's still more than what Cracker had. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then Karasu would have been like at 1 bill flat. I could see them all getting higher than that. But again, these aren't the top 3 fighters of the Revolutionary Army. These are like 6 through to 10.
Yeah.
So that would be a wild jump, wouldn't it? And it really, like...
It really depends on how, like, Oda wants to play it, because I could also see him being, like showing, like, a little scene of, like, a celestial dragon arguing and being like, put a big bounty on these guys' heads. I want them caught right away. I want it to be 3 billion at least, because they're just like an idiot and they don't realize, like, you just don't need to do that. Then because a god said so, you have to do it. That kind of bullshit.
Or they're just like, don't put a bounty on their head, just bring us their head.
Yeah.
On some crazy shit. We've just been asked, would Ace have had or achieved a higher bounty than Sabo currently if he still lived? Yeah, I reckon if Ace was still alive right now, he'd be the strongest of the 3 brothers. And I think that's based on, like, narratively how they've been betraying Ace. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
agree.
Ace is 51, Sabo's 49, Luffy's 0 compared to them. When, like, you look at their rap sheet, right? And if you look at it now, Sabo's getting hyped up to have a higher bounty than Luffy, and Luffy just hit 3 bill. You know what I mean? So it's like, whatever Ace had, add like an extra 1% on top of it, and that's what Ace would be at least. So Ace probably would have had a bounty at the moment, again, like close to, if not equivalent to, Mihawk, right? Although in that situation, you got to think Sabo wouldn't have the fruit. So maybe he'd just be where Sabo is. You know what I mean? Damn. Which revolutionary do you think had the best showcase in this chapter?
I'd probably say Morley.
You reckon Morley?
Yeah.
Just because it's on like the clean 1v1? Because really, based on this chapter, what we're seeing is Morley fought Green Bull, Karasu fought Fujitora, Lindbergh freed slaves, and Sabo was in the castle.
Mm-hmm.
And that is...
The reason I say that is because the only clash that we saw of Morley is, like, he basically goes in for what I'm assuming could be, like, the first clash of the fight, and he immediately takes an arm off and then stabs another hand, which is, like, pretty big moves. And I know it doesn't actually mean anything against Green Bull, but, like, still pretty big moves. Whereas all of like Karasu's attacks against Fuji was basically Fuji just slashing all of the crows rapid fire.
True.
And if anything, if you really look at that engagement, if anything, Karasu was losing that engagement.
True.
Because not only was Fuji cutting every single crow, but he was also sending out projectile slashes to cut further crows ahead. So he was literally cutting faster than he was shooting at crows.
That is true. That is damn true. And hey, that's coming from a dude that's a Karasu stan right now. I'm on the Karasu team through and through. I just love it. But, like, shit. I mean, when you're right, you're right. That being said, do you know what would be a really interesting thing to have happen here? If we see this engagement last a bit longer. So, Morley versus Greenbull right now, it looks more like Morley just has a bit of, like, he's got that giant strength, right? Because if you actually look, like, he cut off one of Greenbull's arms and stabbed the other, but it's like, how did he cut off the arm? His trident,
That's weird.
His trident isn't a sword, right?
Tridents aren't slashy, they're stabby.
It almost looks like he hit his arm with, like, the pole of the spear or trident as he stabbed through, and it just broke apart.
I mean, my intention for Morley, like what I always thought he'd fight like, is basically like whatever he pushes moves. Yeah.
Ooh.
So if he moves his trident towards you, everything that it touches moves out of the way.
Moves or breaks. Yeah, no, I forgot about that. That would 100% work. Which, because we know Greenbull's fine right now. Actually, Greenbull is so fine that Fujitora in this situation was the only one that had a bandage.
Yeah.
So Greenbull came out of this confrontation better than Fuji.
I will say though, like Greenbull can literally come back to full health from one seed pod.
Yes.
So he would be fine no matter what, unless he got actually killed.
But as for the push for its abilities here, I wonder if he's going to be able to actually push Greenbull out of the Logia.
Right, like push his like true body out of the tree.
Yeah.
That'd be weird, but interesting.
Because Morley's kind of like the shittier version of Kuma, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like Kuma, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's push versus reject, basically.
Yeah. So I that could be crazy to see. That definitely could be crazy to see. But okay, no, they're both going in so hard, and it's like I actually love Karasu and Morley here. They both look amazing. But you're 100% right. Morley is looking like far better off in the situation. And again, Morley got more hype from Dovi, so it makes a lot of sense, right? But as for Karasu versus Fuji, do you know what I reckon would be a really interesting thing for their matchup going forward? Karasu shooting these crows isn't working, right? What if he starts trying to cover the area in soot to poison Fuji? And Fuji has to try and counter it using his gravity to make the carbon so heavy that it weighs down.
Yeah.
Because I was actually having this thought process the other week. So you know how Caesar can remove the oxygen in the area and make you suffocate? So I'm close space, I'm confined space trained, right? One of the things you do in confined space training is you learn that the weight of different gases changes what's breathable. So you can walk into an area without knowing anything, and then the first breath you take immediately kills you without realizing it, because you're breathing in something toxic, or you're breathing in something with no oxygen because the oxygen's heavy compared to the other gas, right? If Fuji, while fighting you, could pull all the gas down to the ground, you could be in the middle of a fight with him, and then it's like Caesar, where all of a sudden you can't breathe.
Yeah.
And we actually see in Dressrosa, Fujitora actually has a specific technique when he wants to target something in it actually makes a bubble around him, almost like Lord's Room, but it's like a disc, right? And not everything, but only the things that he wants in that area get pinned to the ground perfectly. So that'd be a crazy thing to see here in this fight if these crows aren't working. So he tries to start cover the area in soot, and Fujitora just brings that hard layer of soot down. That'd be cool. That being said, we've been going for almost 2 hours. Do you have any theories or anything you want to bring up about the chapter?
No, I'm happy.
You happy? Can't wait till next chapter. It can't come soon enough.
Seriously, man, I want to find out more about these the 9 or 10, however many there are.
Holy Knights.
Yeah.
Dude, the fact that they've got that Devil Fruit Swivel has me like, oh shit. Because again, the Revolutionaries look good this chapter, right?
Mhm.
But that's without their two best combatants, Dragon and Ivankov, right? But it's also without their best supporting unit, Bella Betty, who can make every single member of the Revolutionary Army multiple times stronger.
Yep.
So it's like, we're looking at this stuff right now, and it's like, oh, they're having a decent effort in a very specific situation against a nerfed admiral. Cool. How would that fight go if Bella Betty's there going, yo, boys, harden the up? You know what I mean? It could actually get close to a close fight. And I mean, if that shit can be done with like Dragon, Yvonne, like, because like, imagine the Holy Knights do a raid on them. Ivankov runs around injecting everyone with hormones to boost their stats. Bella Betty goes around, gives them a few waves of a flag, makes everyone like super buff. And then all of a sudden you see the revs, and it's almost like all the revs are in Sulong form. They just bust out and they're just nuts.
Yeah.
That shit would be wild. Especially when they got people like, well, they used to, but if they had people like Kuma who, as soon as you got injured, they could reject your injuries. That shit would be wild. Prime Revs, with their whole organization together, and prep time like Batman, could probably beat any organization one-on-one in the One Piece series.
Yeah. By the way, it does make a lot of sense that, like, thinking about it, right? It makes a lot of sense that there are these like 9 or whatever holy knights,
Yep.
because assuming Dragon doesn't know anything about him, and the only real threat is admirals,
It'd be these nine.
Garp. Yeah. So let's say these 9 didn't exist, and Dragon doesn't know about him. What's to stop him from just like tracking the marine ships, finding out when an admiral goes out on a mission on their own, and then Dragon, assuming he was like an ex-admiral or whatever the hell the theories are, like Dragon, Kuma, Ivankov,
Marineford.
Sabo all rock up, just gang him, and then kill the admiral. And then next time an admiral goes on a mission, do the same thing. Just take the admirals out one at a time. Eventually, there's no one to stop you, and you just walk into MARIJOA as like, hey, I win.
While Marineford was happening, they could have just gone there and wiped them out.
Yeah, legit. That's the thing, is these God's Knights, that's what's stopping it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, and that's why, like, and again, I've been on the Admiral agenda for a minute. I'm willing to say right now that my agenda for the Admirals could be wrong, because we didn't know about these Holy Knights. I've had to hype up the Admirals so much, because one, we haven't seen what they're capable of, but two, based on what they were supposed to be narratively, it's what these Holy Knights could end up actually being. You know what I mean? It's like, we were being told for the longest that they're like, it's the Admirals and then the Gorosei and then that's it. And that's the only reason why we're all like, dude, the Gorosei are probably really strong and the Admirals are probably a lot stronger than we give credit for. Now you just introduce 9 badass motherfuckers that can get shit done. It's like, ugh. The others don't need to be as strong now. And that's not to say that they can't be strong or even stronger than we've expected. It's just, we've got wiggle room now. Because you can't tell me that it was like, look, there's 9 of these dudes at least, right? We see 9 silhouettes. You can't tell me one of these dudes isn't going down in like an exhibition match against Luffy. Or at least Dragon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ooh. What about the situation where Luffy takes on the Marines while Dragon takes on the Celestial Dragons and Holy Knights in parallel? Say, like, Egghead Island incident starts, the Marines call for more backup, bringing forces away from New Marineford and MARIJOA. while Dragon attacks MARIJOA. And the forces are sort of split between two major battles, father and son. That could be... Oh. Or would that be asking too much?
I could see it.
Dude, do you know what's crazy?
Hmm?
We're around the corner from getting the introduction of whatever Dragon's Fruit is. And you know he's got a fruit. We saw him back in Logtown doing wind attacks. We saw him in the ASL flashback doing wind abilities. He may not be a wind Logia, which, I mean, mind you, if you had a wind Logia, that would that not be badass?
Yeah, it is pretty badass.
Like, a wind Logia is just like the Logia version of Fujitora's fruit, isn't it? It's just force. You can just apply force to shit.
Yeah.
But if it's not, say it's something like a ridiculous, like, mythical zone or some shit like that. Dude, seeing Dragon fight, holy shit, it's gonna be wild when we actually get to see him, isn't it? Especially if, say the revs, like, because, you know, the revs are, like, clearly not as strong as the Admirals here in a one-on-one, but they're still, like, in the right situation, doing well, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if there's just an insane power cliff between them and Dragon. And, like, you know how, like, the Yonko could one-shot their subordinates?
Oh.
No, it's like, it goes beyond that. It's like Dragon comes out and he's, like, on some Conqueror's Haki knocking out his subordinates shit. That would be wild, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm just gushing now. I'm getting too hyped again. I need the next chapter already. Dude, whatever, like, Shonen Jump, you can go screw yourself for telling Oda that he can't do an extra 10 pages a chapter when he requested, right? Because the way this shit would be flowing right now with an extra 5-10 pages a chapter would be insane.
Yeah.
You got anything else you want to say? Or we'll wrap this up.
I'm happy.
Alright.
Wrap up.
Thank you guys and girls for coming through. It is appreciated. Today is officially going to start being International Karasu Day because that dude is a G. Morley's looking amazing as always in her pretty little skirt, and Lindbergh is surprising me because I'm not going to lie, Lindbergh is the least impressive revolutionary to me. And the fact that he has a light laser here has me like getting a little bit of hope for him. You know what I mean? When he was first introduced and he had that like ice gun, I was just like, dude, okay, I don't care. I don't care about this shit. But now what I'm kind of thinking is like he's got his rifle. He's probably got like a dial on it and he can change the effects of the attack from the dial.
Yeah.
So it's like ice shot, heat shot, light shot sort of thing. Which would be pretty cool and pretty crazy because it works really well with his what do you call it, steampunk aesthetic, right? That being said, until the next chapter of One Piece or until the next video of ours you watch, whatever it is you guys are here for, thank you for coming through. It is really appreciated. Nothing but love, nothing but respect. Say goodbye, eggs for brekkie.
Goodbye.
Peace. Have a damn good day.